Hello, everybody. Hello and welcome. I'm not Stephen O'Donnell, you might have noticed, but I'm here for him today with the National Online Recruitment Awards webcast series. We've got a fabulous guest who's behind the scenes at the moment, and I'll be introducing him in a moment. Actually, I'll just turn his mic off so that if he giggles at my ridiculous introduction, we don't hear it. For those of you who don't know, the National Online Recruitment Awards are now in their 21st year. And in this series of webcasts, Stephen's often profiling Academy members, award partners and new technologies. And today I'm joined by Dougie Lone, who's the CRO of an award sponsor who are Odro. Now, I've got a description for you, but I'm going to bring it up on screen before I read that out because now it's starting to feel major awkward.
How you doing?
Hello there. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, but I do have some really nice text, which is Odro is revolutionising the preferred methods of communicating with clients and candidates with its innovative video platform. And we are going to be discussing the rising expectations of frontline recruiters and candidates and job seekers for easy to use, transparent technology communication and how that drives productivity and diversity. So that's quite exciting.
Yeah, it's a big mouthful, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. So do you want to introduce yourself to everybody in case people don't know who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you, Louise. So my name's Dougie Lone. So I'm like Louise said, I'm the CRO at Odro. So what does that mean? It means that I work really closely with our commercial teams every day. So our sales teams, but also our customer success teams who are responsible for training, implementing and working with all the recruitment businesses that we're lucky enough to partner with on a day-to-day basis. And obviously Odro is a video technology platform as well. So yeah, as way of an introduction, that's probably hopefully shorter and sweeter than the big blurb that you had to read out at the start.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so I'm just going to put a note on LinkedIn to say where we are over on Crowdcast.
Sure.
If people are watching, they can join us on Crowdcast or they can stay there. Okie dokie. So I've got some questions for you. Some of them are around the awards. Some of them are a bit more around, I guess, what you do. But I guess we ought to start off by asking how you're involved in the awards this year.
Yeah, good question. So we're involved. We're sponsoring the Best Employment Advice website award this year. A category that obviously offers a lot of value to a lot of people, particularly given what happened over the last 12, 18 months, right? Things like furlough, etc. So there's a lot of really, really strong contenders in that category. So it's one that we're really, really excited to be involved with and working with Stephen and the rest of the team.
Do you know, that's actually my favourite category, which might be an awful thing to say because there's so many other cool categories with the kind of the generalist job board and the consumer publication and things like that. But actually the employment advice one, I've seen it really evolve over the years from, how to write your CV to some really, really cool platforms out there. So I'm glad you're involved in that. Are you going to be at the awards?
Do you know, I'm not. Unfortunately, I'm moving house for the first time in, I don't know, like 10 years or something like that, on the day of the awards. So I think if I left my wife to do everything on her own, I would probably come back to a divorce. But Susie, our head of marketing, and a couple of team are going to be there. So I'm gutted to be missing it, to be honest, because it looks like it's going to be a fantastic night.
It's in a really nice venue as well, so that's quite
exciting. It's a new one this year, isn't it? It's a new venue.
It is, and it's really, really fancy. And it's, I know that the awards for Stephen, a lot of it is about people just getting together and having a drink, and you can still do that. But this one's actually a slightly lighter venue. I think it'll be good for people. Nice. So over to you again in terms of Odro. Do you want to just let me know kind of like how things have been for you for the last 18 months?
I think for a lot of people, it's businesses, things were crazy over the last 18 months, right, in terms of ups, downs, and everything in between. I think naturally, it's funny, Louise. People always say to me, "Oh, Odro video technology, you guys should have like a yacht in the Bahamas or something like that." Given what happened to the world and how much of a need there must have been for video, and actually, that's not the case. So. We are a video technology business, but we supply exclusively to recruitment businesses. And naturally, when a pandemic strikes, there's going to be a lot of people. The recruitment industry as a whole, as everyone knows, was widely impacted by that. And as a result, there's obviously a knock-on impact in terms of us as a supplier. So, I think it was I think probably 18 months ago, it was a pretty scary time for us, just as much as it was for recruitment businesses, to be perfectly honest. But it's been really good as a company to kind of regroup during that period of time. And actually, one of the things that we really enjoyed doing the most during that period of time was working really closely with a lot of the clients that we have in the industry to add as much value as we could during that kind of 3 to 6 months where no one really knew what was happening. And that's kind of, we've kind of reaped the rewards of that, which was great. We never really did it with the intention of getting anything back. We did it because we wanted to try and help out in any ways that we could. And that's been great for our kind of growth as a business since then. So yeah, it's been exciting. We've moved office recently as well. So all that's what I'm working from my bedroom today, because like I said, I'm moving house in a week, but or just over a week. But yeah, we moved office and stuff like that as well. So it's been a really kind of transformative kind of 18 months for us as a business. And the uptake of video, not just as a means of doing things like this, but as part of kind of every touch point in the recruitment process has definitely accelerated over the last 18 months, which has been good, but also interesting for us along the way. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea into what we've been up to.
It does. It's been a roller coaster, I think, for most of us. So yeah, no surprise it has for you too. My camera went like absolute mashed potato then. I've got this new Logitech camera, which is auto-focusing when I don't want it to. I need to sit completely still. So if for the rest of this I look a little bit rigid, it's because I daren't move again.
That's all good.
It wasn't technology. Well, it was, but it was my actual camera. Okay, so we've talked a bit about your experience in the last 18 months, but can we just talk a little bit about the kind of development of video technology? Because it has been around for a long time. And I think that even now I speak to recruiters who are getting confused about the different ways they can use video. So I guess to put out video job adverts, to do one-way messaging to candidates, to ask candidates to do video interviews live. I mean, do you want to share a bit about what you think about the sector as a whole?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like video technology, I think is actually at its core, right? If you look at the kind of video meetings or video communications, the Zooms, the Teams, these kind of things of the world, and Odro is always going to be spoken about as a similar type thing, but for recruitment. Actually, the technology itself hasn't changed that drastically than what it was when you first used Skype, right? Like everyone remembers using Skype at some point. It's simpler to use, but actually I think a lot of the change in the development of video within recruitment or anywhere else has actually purely been down to people's attitudes towards it. I was at a really interesting kind of panel. I was sitting in a panel at a really kind of interesting event a couple of weeks back, and someone said this, and it really resonated with me, is that very few people are talking about digital transformation now. Like no one's really talking about how tough digital transformation is or how much digital transformation is going to impact the sector, because it kind of shows the last 18 months, the last 12 months showed that when people have to change, they can change. And it's not so much that that there's an obstacle there as much as actually a mindset piece. So we're going off on a bit of a tangent there, but as a result of that, when there's more engagement with things like video, etc., then obviously people then start to look to, because they're more bought into the value that it can offer for things like their everyday tasks, they start to look at how they can then use it for things that are maybe out with the norm. So like you were talking about there, things like video job ads. And I think the most important thing that people are finding when they use video, whether it's on a webinar, like on a crowdcast like just now, or an Odro interview or a Zoom meeting with their gran or whatever it might be, is that all of these things help promote an emotional connection. And actually eliciting that emotional response from the person you're speaking to is something that is giving people the results that they need. So naturally, when we get that response and we get that reaction, we continue to do it over and over again. And we look for different ways in which we can, in different scenarios in which we can elicit that emotional response. So yeah, it's been interesting. Don't get me wrong, and I'm sure you must see it as well, Louise. Like some of the things like that people are trying to do with video technology just now are cool, but pretty crazy. Like look at what Mark Zuckerberg's trying to do with the whole changing Facebook to Meta and creating the metaverse and all of that. I'm sure there'll probably be a point where you can have a video conference in your bedroom and it feels like everyone is actually in the bedroom with you, or your office or whatever it might be at the same time. So yeah, I think it's always going to be changing. But actually the pace at which it's changed hasn't probably been as fast as people have expected. I think it's just been the pace of adoption is probably the thing that's changed much.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. And it's funny that you said about having a Zoom call with your gran. And I think that there was a conversation which went on far, far more than it needed to about how job seekers might be slightly hesitant to use video, and that the the uncomfortable nature of that, and, you know, would they have the right background and the surroundings and everything else? And I think that argument hasn't even totally gone away. There's still people who are saying, I don't actually want to be on a video call as part of an interview. I'm still not happy with the environment around me. I've just noticed that on widescreen, you can see my dodgy old granny fireplace in shot, which I didn't think you could see. But you know what I mean?
I've got the world's worst light shade in here as well. I mean, this has become a fixture for me during the pandemic. My wife put that in at the start, and it's in there. You know, I think that's one thing I feel like the pandemic showed everybody as well is it's okay to be yourself. Like authenticity is something that we always talk about a lot in Odro, and actually I think there's more of a comfort of that just in normal professional and business circles now, that it's okay for the person to be the person, which I think is why there's more comfort. I mean, I think 2 years ago, if I'd suggested I was going to do this from a bedroom with my door and that lampshade, people would be like, you're crazy, what are you doing? You can't do that. But actually, there's just an understanding that everyone's human, right? And we're all trying to do our best. I mean, I think there's limits to that. Like, you know, there's the horror stories of people turning up to video interviews with their pajamas on and all of that kind of thing. But yeah, I think also as well, probably pre-pandemic, video was always used as a way to like screen out candidates, like to rule people out, if that makes sense. Like it was never really used as an enabler. It was used as a way to kind of, you know, cut things out. But actually, it's flipped really in the favor of the candidate now, in favor of the job seeker.
And we're going to talk about that in a minute, actually. That's a really good point. And actual fact, my first question is about the recruiter side of it, but also ultimately job seekers, which is, you know, specifically with your offerings in mind, how does that directly benefit recruiters and then ultimately job seekers as well?
Yeah, definitely. So look, if you think of the way that like a recruiter's role, and we talk about it a lot at Odro, is about creating incredible connections, right? So a recruiter wants to create an incredible connection with a candidate, you want to create an incredible connection with a client, but more importantly, and the most important connection at all, is actually an incredible connection between the candidate and the client, right? That's the most important one for everyone in the process. And we have a framework in place, which is kind of 21 different points throughout that kind of throughout that journey, throughout those kind of 3 journeys that merge together, where recruiters can do more to create more of a connection with each of these people, because the more connection we have with the candidate and the more connection we have with the client, the more likely we are to make the connection between them both, because we understand what both are looking for. And I'm not just talking about reading a job description and having a quick call. I'm talking about truly getting to understand people. And I think when we look at recruiters that are doing really well right now, those are the ones that are able to do that. So sorry, going back to how does Odro help with that, and how does our technology benefit that? It allows people, like I said at the start, to elicit more of that emotional connection. So rather than, if we use an example of doing interview prep very quickly over the phone whilst you're rushing and writing down notes or responding to emails with a candidate the night before, actually our technology allows, as a way that people probably wouldn't expect, to sit down and actually record some pretty in-depth interview prep for candidates for a particular position. They can add things like effects, subtitles, all that kind of stuff to it, and notes, and they can then supply that to the candidate, any candidate for that position, the night before or 2 nights before. But it means that those candidates are always receiving the same high quality preparation, regardless of how busy that recruiter is. Because let's be honest, if I'm on the 5th or 6th candidate prep call and I've had a really busy day, I'm probably not going to give you the same attention as I would have the first time around. And look, there's that's one of kind of 21 main points. So without going on and on and on about it, I think the key for me is almost about video helps recruiters benefit that life cycle by eliciting more of an emotional response from the people they work with, whether it's candidates or clients. It allows them to ensure that they can replicate the same high quality of work that they do over and over again, and it allows them to stand out. And I think that's the most important part right now, because we're seeing the number of recruiters, I'd imagine if you looked at it on a graph, went like this during 2020 and is now like this in 2021. And as it goes back to this again, the need to stand out is obviously going to become much more prevalent as well. So those would be the three kind of main points on the recruiter side.
If you take that candidate prep example, it's interesting because what we're talking about here is building better relationships by doing something automated. So by actually not having a personal conversation, you are giving everyone a better experience, I think, because you can ensure that your recruiters are absolutely clear in what they're sharing. And like you say, all candidates get the same information. And also that I know there's inherent bias in any recruitment process where you've got 3 candidates and one of them you think is going to get the job. You think they're better. You're putting all 3 forward. And then you brief that person better then you do the other two. So it takes out that kind of unfortunate bias of, I'm going to give better information to Sally and then I'll do the other two later. Everyone's having the same information. And I like that.
And on that example as well, that bias is detrimental to the candidate, but it's detrimental to the recruiter. Because like it's, it's like the £1 million drop live. You don't put all your money on one horse, if you like, and then it goes or one answer, and then unfortunately it doesn't go your way. And I think sometimes that's where frustration can come from. Like, I was a recruiter for a number of years. I used to get frustrated when my favourite candidate didn't get the role, and I'd spent a lot of time and effort. And I probably unconsciously put more time and effort into that one candidate than the other two. And if I'd given all three an equal shot, at least one of them would have got the role, right? So I totally agree with you. Totally agree.
I saw an interesting bit of tech the other day, which was essentially analysing every single point of the process so that it could start to work out where you had that bias. And this would have been a really cool example of a recruiter spending an extra 5 minutes on every single call with one person. And that's fine if that person every time got the job. But I suspect very strongly that isn't what would happen. And that, sometimes nobody would get the job because you were not investing in everyone the same. So,
absolutely. No, it's really interesting.
Yeah. I can't even remember what the tech is. It was great though. So I guess that's touched on how it does benefit the job seeker. But I mean, one of the things that the online recruitment awards are about is about the candidate experience. I mean, that's obviously part of it. It's not about job boards making a ton of money. It's about better benefiting the job seeker. But do you think that what you're doing does have a serious knock-on effect to the benefit of the job seeker?
Totally. And like I said, and I alluded to at the start, like I think a couple of years ago, people, like it was hard, right? Because when we were trying to get Odro off the ground and trying to speak to more and more people about it, I think there was the natural assumption of, I've seen video before because it's been around for 20 years. I've seen it in some form, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And everyone automatically went to, like I said, that screen out type approach. But actually, where we see a really high uptake and high success rate with video with the clients we work with or people we partner with, isn't when they're just using it as a way to screen people out. It's actually when they're using it to amplify that candidate. So they're looking at that candidate and thinking, okay, and I'm not advocating for the complete replacement of the CV, right? I'm not one of those people. I mean, it may happen, but I can't look. I mean, I can hardly see past next Saturday, never mind 10 years in the future, right? So I'm not advocating for the complete removal of the CV, but what I do think is actually that in this day and age, when we're talking about this environment now, where people are more important than ever, where we understand there's a more human element, we can be more authentic, and there's not that need to have this kind of pretend business persona, if you like. That actually, at the same time, then we should be using any technology that we can to amplify people and help highlight those individuals, rather than just saying, Dougie's a good candidate because he's got 5 years sales experience. Well, actually, Dougie's a good candidate because he's got 5 years sales experience, but here's why he's the right fit for your business. And being able to show that and identify that. And that's where the recruiters that use our technology really benefit from it. Because they're offering that as a service to the candidate, not at a chargeable rate, but they're saying to the candidate, look, you work with another recruiter, they're just going to put your CV forward. But if you work with us, what we're going to be able to do is, yes, we'll put your CV forward, but we'll also be able to amplify you as a candidate in that process by doing X, Y, and Z, and they can work with them through it. And ultimately as well, outside of the amplification of the candidate during the process, there's a lot of time-saving things. How many times would a candidate have had to go to an interview, taking time off work, etc., to go and meet someone in their office, and then figured out that actually it's not the right business for them, or they didn't get the role? At least with this, I actually think that part of the reason for the Great Resignation and stuff is that it's really easy to interview now.
It's so true. Easy. It's so true, and I think that's a good thing. I think that
totally.
As an employer, you might be quite cross because you are going to lose people, but you should be losing those people. They're moving on to something better, something that you can't offer them. That's going to happen. We should not make a barrier to them being able to find better work. And maybe if it makes everybody up their game in terms of offering the things to their employees that they should have offered all along, that would be another added value. But yeah, I honestly, I remember the days where it was so obvious when someone was going for a job interview, they'd have a dentist appointment, but then you'd see them in town in their best suit. I mean, I worked in quite a small town, so if you went for an interview in town, somebody else would see you. That was awful.
It's brutal, isn't it? It's totally brutal. I remember I've seen it before as well, where when I first started working in recruitment, and people would have had like you said, like a dentist appointment in the morning, but they come in at lunchtime, but they come in like in their full suit and stuff, and you'd be like, you got the dentist in your three-piece, like how does that work?
Exactly. So no,
yeah,
let's make it possible for people who do want to find other work to do that, and also they can do it in their lunch break legitimately. They're not having to take a whole day off work or a half day off work. They're not doing it on your money. They're doing it in their no, I love that. I don't think we should stop people from finding the right job for them ever. So no, I like that. I totally agree with you. So I've got a question from Stephen to ask you, which is around how are we seeing recruiters communicating with job seekers in this tricky market? Is that a real challenge?
I think if we speak to any recruiter right now, they'll say that candidates are a challenge for them. I think there's kind of three buckets when we're speaking to people that they're telling us. One is one is finding the right candidates in the first place. So it's harder to find. The second is actually engaging with those candidates, which appears to be the most prevalent. And the third is that the market is moving so quickly that those candidates, they do get into process ultimately, or job seekers, they do get into process, have multiple offers, and potentially then drop out. And again, sorry to keep beating the same drum, but for me, it goes back to two things. It's emotional connections and creating good relationships with people. So if we look at how recruiters are now trying to communicate with job seekers in a different way, I think they've kind of come to realize and understand that a copy and paste written message to the same person or to 100 people isn't quite cutting the mustard really anymore. And actually, if they want to engage with these people, they need to do it in a slightly different way. And that does mean that you have to take a bit more time to do that. But ultimately, and I'd hope, because it's what I'm exposed to, and I hope the rest of the market is doing this as well, is that people are starting to understand that actually 100, 200, 300 messages with 10 responses is no better really than sending out 10 messages and getting 5 responses. I'd much rather the latter over the former.
Yeah.
So people are spending more time, but I think there is a change needed with that, and a mindset shift of going, it is okay to specifically target the right people for this role with really compelling messaging. Using video as part of that, obviously, or anything else that I could do to kind of stand out. And I think that's probably, from what we're seeing and what we're talking to people about, the biggest change, understanding that some nice words on an email just really isn't kind of cutting it now when it comes to grabbing people's attention, because they're just seeing so much of that. So we need to be able to stand out to them more.
I think that we've been moving more towards learning how to engage better with job seekers for a number of years now anyway. That's been messaging even before this, which is about making certain that you know how to do that engagement piece. I mean, I was in recruitment 30 years ago when people were talking about how spray and pray doesn't work, but people are still doing it. So I think it's a really long road to changing those mindsets. My opinion is actually that individual recruiters probably do know this. Sometimes it's the leadership who are like, you've got to hit your numbers. I don't understand. You've only contacted 12 people. How do you expect to fill this role? Yeah. I think that's probably still a challenge.
Definitely. It's a very good point, actually. And I think it's actually about updating the metrics. I think actually, if we look at ratios in more detail, if you look at the ratio of outreach to response or outreach to registration, and then once we nail a strong ratio, then we can amplify the volume that we do. But I think that's the thing, is that there's so much focus on the volume and about a lot of negligence on the ratio that those two outweigh each other, so or they clash and burn each other out. So I think you're spot on.
Changing tact entirely, at the Recruitment Agency Expo, you did a showcase theatre piece. You spoke twice.
Yes.
You spoke twice. Yeah, you spoke. Yeah. So you spoke in the standard theatre, but you did the showcase theatre piece, and I think that was the best attended session of the 2 days for the showcase. What sort of things were you talking about there?
Good question. I'll tell you something. The second one that I did was a last-minute replacement for our CEO Ryan, which was an interesting one, because I had about 4 days to pull a presentation together. So, just as well, that wasn't the most attended one, because that would have been a horror story. But no, the first one, the candidate engagement piece, was really talking about actually all the work that we do in a nutshell. It's looking at how do we better engage with candidates, what different methods can we use to engage with those candidates, and how can we make sure that two most important takeaways. One was that we can often be quite guilty as general people, not just recruiters, but salespeople, just anyone, that when we're trying to engage with someone, we try and tell them what we've got before we understand what they want, if that makes sense. So we go to the candidates and say, this great opportunity, it's doing this, this, and this. That's not a great opportunity to that candidate unless you know what they're looking for. It could be a rubbish opportunity for that candidate. So actually, how can we do more of a discovery? How can we understand more about that person before we try and promote a relevant solution to them or a relevant opportunity. And then also, if we spend so much time looking for these candidates in the first place and we finally find them, why is it so common? I think the study that we did, and there's a LinkedIn poll, which I'm sure, like I said, people throw tomatoes at you for saying, but where 73% of the recruiters that we surveyed said that they will send a candidate a message once, and if they don't get a response, we'll move on to someone else, which is a lot of people reaching out, spending a lot of time finding really good candidates, sending them a message, getting no response, and then moving on, which I'm not suggesting we stop people, but I think there's a more regular follow-up cadence that we could be doing to those people to engage them. So yeah, those were the two kind of main parts of it.
It's absolutely crazy because forever we identify recruiters as salespeople, and there's two things that salespeople do. One is that they know you have to contact people 6 or 7 times in order to get a response. If you were trying to sell me a water filter, you would not just send me one message, you would be on the case with me. The second thing that salespeople do is discovery calls. So the idea of not doing a discovery call with one of the two most important people in your process is actually madness. So I think that it's all very well if you don't believe that recruiters are salespeople and you believe they're marketeers, then go down that route and do all the things that marketing people do. But I'm pretty sure that marketing people don't only contact a prospective client once either. So,
yeah, no, you're so right. And actually, I think it's interesting because we actually do that on the client side. So we would never think about working a job with a client without having a call with them to understand what they're looking for, right? So why do we try and I understand that volume and everything else, but why would we try and pitch an opportunity to a candidate until we actually understand what they're looking for, what they want? So yeah, bang on.
Well, I can see why that was a popular session. And I would have joined it, but I was running around with a clipboard, possibly this clipboard.
You pulled off an amazing event, to be fair. It was the first one back in a couple of years, and it was really, really well executed. I think everyone had a great time. So if that's what it takes to pull it off, then fair play to you.
It was great. I'm looking forward to next year's. I tried to book my hotel for Birmingham 2022, but weirdly, you can't book for October next year yet. I was a bit keen. That's how much I want to go back.
We'll be there in London.
Indeed. Okay, so 2 more questions for you, and one of them is about the NORAs. So, of all the finalists in the awards, which ones stand out for you?
I think it would be too. I think it would be too revealing to give that away at this point. I also think I understand as well that genuinely the thing that I like about the NORAs and having followed Stephen for years is that anybody that is shortlisted genuinely deserves it as well. It's not just a case of it's not who you know and all of that kind of stuff, if that makes sense. So I think that there's a lot of really strong people that are shortlisted, a lot of customers and businesses that we work with that are shortlisted on there. And there's a lot of people that I see on things like LinkedIn and stuff like that as well. I mean, in the category that we sponsor, people like Andrew McCaskill, for example, that some of the stuff that he did during the last kind of 12, 18 months has been really impressive. So I think there's a lot of really good businesses and organizations and even individuals that are shortlisted, but it would be too difficult to specifically pick out 1 or 2 without also trying to not give the game away, if that makes sense.
I like that answer. That's perfect. And I suspect loads of them are your partners, like you say, they're businesses you're working with or alongside. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So my final question for you is, we're not quite in December yet, but it's a kind of like look to the future. So what do you think that we're going to be experiencing in the recruitment space or as job seekers in the coming 12 months?
Yeah, cool. So I think I said 10 minutes ago that I struggled to see past next Saturday, but
you did.
I'll try and give you a decent enough answer for this one. I think that the overall market, like we were touching on in terms of it's easier to interview now, I think the actual job market itself is going to be candidate and job seeker pool is going to be much more fluid than what it's been before. I know we talk about millennials and all of that kind of stuff, leaving, 2 years, 3 years, an average tenure dependent upon age and generations and that kind of thing. But I just believe that the world now has become much more connected. The ability to work from home, the ability to meet people online, interview with people, the world's a much smaller place now. And I think, individual choice is probably one of the most compelling forces I think that are going to happen in the recruitment or the industry or the world as a whole. And as a result of that, if people have more individual choice and they have more things to do it, they're probably going to be looking at themselves and saying, okay, what skills can I offer? How much and how much am I wanting to be paid for that? And almost acting like a contractor, if that makes sense in a way, but as a permanent employee and moving to the businesses they feel they can add value to. And then the final piece on that, though, I think is, whilst that makes every human sound like a mercenary, I believe that purpose and genuine purpose is something that's going to drive people. I think if you're not passionate about something, then you can probably force yourself to work 40 hours a week. If you're not passionate about it, you can get by on it. I'm just a big believer that why not just do something you're passionate about and work 60 hours a week and get really good at it and achieve all the goals that you want to achieve. And I think that's the difference, that there'll be more people out there and understanding now they've got individual choice, that there's a much more fluidity in the market, and ultimately they can keep looking until they find something that genuinely and really does match with the purpose that they have and what they want to achieve. So yeah, I think those individuals are going to be having a massive impact. And that means as recruiters and businesses, we've got to have a real strong look at ourselves internally and externally, at what we're doing internally as businesses, how we project that externally, and how we make sure we're meeting those people's requirements.
I think that's really interesting what you said, because actually it's even if you just take out what that means for recruitment business hiring internally, which obviously would mean that you would be trying to hire people who had a real passion for this, hiring people on something other than just what's on their CV is really, really challenging. And when you've got individuals who want more and are able to give more, but it's not kind of able to be like ticking boxes, that's a really big challenge. And that, I think, is exactly what you should be paying your recruiter to do. So that is what it makes you worth the fee that you charge, is your ability to do that above and beyond somebody who is potentially in an HR function with a lot of other responsibility. That's a real recruitment skill. And I'd be really excited to see recruiters excel at that.
Definitely. No, I totally agree with you. Totally agree.
Yeah, I find that fascinating. That would make a superb talk for the Agency Expo 2022, Birmingham or London. Just saying.
Together.
Do. All right, cool. Well, at the end of our 30 minutes, I've really enjoyed this chat. And I'm sorry Stephen couldn't be here, but I'm also quite glad that he couldn't.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. So I think Stephen's back later this week with some other shows. It'll be a shame not to see you in London, but I look forward to seeing Susie and anyone else from the team. And hopefully I will see you in London for the Agency Expo in February.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We'll be there.
All right. Thanks ever so much. I'll speak to you
again, Louise.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.